Welcome all to our first podcast in hopefully many more, where we will interact with industry leaders uh, who manage companies across segments and financial stalwarts from banks, NBFCs, and other fintech founders. The series strives to give a perspective of the dominating relevance of digitization in today's time and age. And this will help deliver a 360-degree view on how we, as fintechs, play a very important role in the ever growing growth story of today's corporate world. In our first podcast, we have an industry leader who has been a voice of change, innovation, and dynamism in India. He is part of one of the largest chemical manufacturers globally, and in India is a leading manufacturer of crop protection solutions like pesticides and insecticides, which aims to equip farmers across the value chain using innovative agri products. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce and invite Mr. Vikas Jain, CFO of Adama India, to discuss and share his perspective on the significance of digitization and the relevance of digitization in the life of a modern CFO.
Yeah, hi Nirav.
Hi, Vikas is a chartered accountant by qualification and has spent a decade in helping and shaping the organization grow and dominate in India. Vikas, thank you so much for being on the show and wish you a very, very happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks.
So thank you for taking time out, Vikas, to do this. I know it's a special day. I know it's a busy day given the year end. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for the wishes.
Okay. Because you've been with Adama for a while now, and we'd love to hear, how the journey began and where you are today, and what's really your favorite part of the job being a CFO.
Yeah, that's an interesting. You say you started story like once upon a time. So it was like once upon a time in 2009, the company had started only with very few employees. That time I was in KPMG, like part of the Big Four, and I
Right.
used to audit this firm from the audit side, from the business side. So suddenly in 2010 there was some issues with the company, and the then CFO, the Israeli CFO, had with whom I had very good rapport. So almost for 1.5 years we used to deal on the audit matters. So he suddenly called me one night and told me to meet next day, and to my surprise, he offered me to join the company. So that's how once upon a time in 2010 I joined this company, and it has been a very wonderful journey for me. It's almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
Uh, I started as a controller and then promoted to deputy CFO, and then in 2017 promoted to CFO. So it has been almost 4 years now, and the best part of my role would be it's like it's not monotonous. Up and down, so you're fully connected to the business. Obviously it's a given that you need to take care of your financials and compliance and managing the books. That is nowadays 50% part, but the other 50% part that I need to get fully involved in the business. So every day you are like dealing with different kind of situation, different issues, problems. You come out with solutions, come out with various ideas, and also think of consequences that what will happen based on your decision. So, so it's like an heartbeat till the time it is moving up and down. We say we are alive. So we are alive because we are in this changing world and not doing monotonous things. So that's the good part I feel I'm doing here.
No, absolutely. I think the CFO's role today has transformed from being a bookkeeper to now a strategic partner to the CEO and the vision of the company. So that's absolutely relevant what you said, because. But let me ask you this: how have you seen? You've been with KPMG for a while. Then you've seen the whole journey from being a controller to being a CFO in Adama. How have you seen the evolution of the CFO's role over the last 2 decades in India, especially?
Yeah. So I think the role of CEO CFO has drastically changed, in the sense, as I mentioned earlier, that as you mentioned, that it was most of it was bookkeeping and managing your compliances, managing your financials, reporting to the shareholders. But now it has gone into very next level, in the sense now 50% of your time goes into these things, and the other 50% has to be that you need to get fully involved in the business. Now it could be anything you get. It's almost everything. It's the full supply chain. You have to get involved in the marketing, sales. So half of my time goes in discussing with all these people, and also when we discuss and come out with certain management direction, to ensure that all those directions are taking place and are actually implemented. So it's an ever changing role, and especially now that we are in this world of like internet, that everything is changing on daily basis. You have to get yourself updated. So if you're not getting yourself updated, then you'll end up with your traditional roles. And that's how you see many, in fact, CFOs taking a CEO's role, because they have this 360-degree view of the business. Because anything which has to pass through finance, right? So it
Yeah,
doesn't matter, anything, it has to pass through finance. So they have a look at almost all the things. So if you add your vision, if you add your people skills, and if you add few more things, then obviously you can uh, lead your team to help the business more,
sure.
partner the business, and help the CEO in conducting his day-to-day operations.
Sure. And now the CFO's role, and indeed I keep saying this, that even the CHRO role has become an epicenter for business, right? You are at the really nerve center of everything that happens in the company, because both those roles, both everything passes through you. So there is it's a great place to be uh, from a CEO's perspective as well, because you become the perfect partner to be able to help guide the vision and execute it.
Yeah.
And that being said, for a company as large as Adama in India, as a CFO, there must be 100 things that are spinning in the air, right? So what are the different considerations that a CFO for such a large company must balance at all times? I'm saying, what are the considerations that a CFO of a large company such as Adama must balance at all times?
Yeah, so I think the considerations is the most important part, as I mentioned, is you have to look everything through a business angle. You have to ensure that it's obviously there's a conflict of interest, because as a CFO you have your little role that, okay, you want to manage your cost, you want to ensure that not too much money is stuck in, say, inventory or receivable. So all these are interest which little bit conflicts with, say, other teams, for example, say sales team or marketing team. You need to have that balanced approach here, to ensure that you're not tilting too much on one side. Obviously CEO is there to take care of the business side fully, but you also need to ensure, and as a CFO, not to tilt too much of in managing the cost, which actually hampers the business. So you have to have that balancing stick with you, to ensure that you are not tilting too much on one side, to give too much of leeway, which comes as issues in future, or tilt on the too much of stringent side, that the business gets suffocated. So I think the biggest thing is to
Right,
balance these both the things.
right. The imperative of conserving cash flow and versus growth, right? It's a
Exactly.
classic CFO dilemma that everybody hears of, and especially in the nature of your business, right? Because you have far-flung supply chains, you have a very fragmented distribution model. Uh, how does that affect cash flow and working capital for a company like
Yeah,
Adama?
so we are in traditional seasonal business. So everything like
Hmm.
uh, as even my Israeli boss will say that we need to pray to our millions of gods. So you can understand how seasonal nature our business is into. So obviously it's India is a vast geography, and each zone will have their own problems. So there is possible that one zone will have excess rainfall, while the next zone to it will have a shortage of rainfall. So Adama has close to 14,000 customers. And, it's very
Wow.
difficult to predict the cash flows because first of all it's seasonal, and secondly you don't know which area will have any issues because of as I said, various things, shortage of rainfall, excess, the crop has got damaged. So you can predict to an extent based on your previous trends, but
Right.
to give the accuracy obviously is very difficult to achieve. But
Right.
only thing what we can do our best is to ensure that our supply and everything gets to the dealer on time, and we provide our utmost services and ensure that we train the farmers, so that ultimately if farmers is happy, and he obviously will go and buy our products, which will ensure that the cash flow will rotate in the market, and this
Right.
helps us to manage our cash flow. So we have seen many a times that some places, because of the seasonality nature, your cash flow gets delayed by 1 or 2 months or 3 months, or you might get a lot of bad debts from specific area. But yes, these are all part and parcel of the business. But we do our utmost to ensure that we get our money on time by various means, which also includes taking help of the banks and the fintechs.
Right. Right. Talking about banks and fintechs, with all these fragmented payouts and granular receivables, how do you see banks and fintechs adding value to someone like Adama?
Yeah, so I think yeah, it was few years back. It was only the banks, and you had to go based on what the products bank had. But now I
Right.
think we have seen in last 2 3 years wherein good amount of startup has come. Now
Right.
it's like a marriage between a bank and a startup, that the bank has all the reach and the infrastructure and of course the money, and the startups have all the ideas and they are very nimble to the changes. They can quickly come and integrate with your books, and they have different kind of they can do their customization very quickly, which
Right.
generally is not possible in a bank, because if bank has to start any project, they'll take a lot of time. And what I see is that now bank itself are tying up with various fintechs to provide the entire services of product to the customer. So
Right.
I think it's like a marriage fixed in heaven.
Right.
The banks and fintechs are coming together and finally helps us to ensure that we get our money on time.
No, that. It's perfectly put. It's a marriage made in heaven. I think fintechs who think that they will replace banks, in my opinion, are really silly and blue sky thinkers. I think there is a great partnership between banks and fintechs, which enable companies such as us to be able to add any value to companies such as Adama. Uh, but one of the things that's always interesting to see in a large company dynamic is, while a CFO is championing the cause of working capital transformation in a company, you have to work with a diverse set of teams. You have to work with business, you have to work with marketing and sales, you have to work with the leadership of the company and auditors, etc. So how do you handle interdepartmental coordination conflicts at times, and how do you bring it all together uh, to create a winning working capital solution for a company like Adama?
Yeah, so conflict is a small term. RG is more of a fighting. So yeah, just jokes apart, but obviously you need to bring all the stakeholders on board, because if you want to implement something, and it's a far-reaching implication, right? Because in Adama, we, as I said, we have 14,000 customers. You
Right.
can't just implement something wherein the other departments, or leave aside your internal department itself, is not in full consensus. So the first thing is, okay, the idea which comes from our team, and then we need to ensure that we bring everyone together. So we ourselves had to many times convince a lot to the sales team, because finally they are the field on the ground who has to
Right.
go and convince them. So you need to ensure that you convince your sales team, who in turn will only work when you show them the value addition. You need to show that it's a win-win for the dealer, because they will obviously see that the dealer interest is protected,
Sure.
and from our side we see that our interests are also protected. So it should be a win-win for
Sure.
both, for both the teams, because each one has their own interest. And obviously you need to explain it to the management, because management obviously has to take a detailed view of what is happening, to ensure that everything is balanced. You're not incurring too much of cost, or you're not tightening too much.
Sure.
So all this, finally, as I said, fight together and ensure that everyone understands what you want to implement. And if they see value, and I'm sure generally the management or the sales team will never say no to anything which they see that bringing some value to their existing work.
I'm sure, absolutely, and especially in times like this, right? We've witnessed a major black swan event where working capital has been a major constraint for especially the smaller SME dealers, distributors, etc. And a black swan event like COVID-19 must definitely have impacted both your supply chain and your distribution chain. Uh, what have you seen happening in these two areas, and what steps is Adama taking to help these guys?
Yeah, so this is like a lifetime event. There was one day when we all management were sitting together, and we were so happy that one truck has moved from our factory during the COVID times. So there
My
was a
point.
time when no trucks moved from our factory and everything had stopped. And when
Yeah,
we got the news that one truck has moved, so otherwise hundreds of trucks moves daily. So
right.
you can imagine what impact it will have on our supply chain, that the management is happy that one truck has moved. So
Amazing.
so obviously the impact is far flung. So good thing for us is we were part of the essential goods, since we are selling the insecticide pesticides.
Right.
We're allowed to move our material without, obviously there were a lot of issues, because each state started their obviously had their own rules. uh,
Right.
they'll move the goods, and even the warehouses. So there was a lot of issues, but again, the important point here, in case you have to resolve these issues, is to be flexible and to have constant communication, uh, because in some places we had to move our goods in the morning from, say, before 6 it has to reach certain warehouses. So you
Right.
need to backtrack and do all those calculations.
Sure.
So it's all about free flow of communication and fast decisions, because uh, now in the hindsight it looks that, okay, we somehow did a good job, but we remember those days when it was like a high pressure day. You never know that you are following up with each and every vehicle. So it is a big change. So what eventually has happened is, you realize that you need to have much better deals, or much better communication with your transporters and the supply chain also,
Right.
to ensure that, and obviously bring as far as possible little automation, and your work happens faster. uh, so
Sure.
what so 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 nutshell, what we see is that the COVID has brought about uh, more automation, and and more ensure that we take our decisions much faster.
No, and talking about automation and digitization, that has caused change in various functions, right, in a large company, whether it's risk mitigation, whether it's liquidity, etc. What area of digitization do you think has helped the most in making a CFO's role easier?
I think now it's not
Sorry.
limited to one area. One is so generally we look at it in two ways. One is that you identify what are your business problems and ensure that what you can bring either or with the help of a startup or on your own, some solution, let it be digitization or to use the technology much better. So that is one thing, that you identify the problems and you try to bring the solutions. The other part is that there are, in fact, various startups, obviously, who wants to get in touch with you, who has solutions which many things you would have not thought of, right?
Right.
So you need to take care of both of these two things, that you try to identify your business problems and solve it, and also identify what are the best practices which are happening in the market, because there is no dearth of startups which are bringing excellent solutions to the business problems. So to keep your mind open, and once you keep both the things, not only solving problems but also bring in best practices, which will effectively ensure that your digitization and your technology will certainly improve business in much better fashion.
Understood. Right. And you know what? Where do you see the next steps for digitization to solve? You know, which
Next,
area do you think in a CFO's job uh, can technology play the biggest role in the next wave? You know, coming going forward.
next already we have already seen, because earlier the data was to record and then it was to analyze. Now the data is to predict.
Right.
So now you will see that the technology has gone to such a way that it will analyze your data and it will predict, so that you can change your future course of action, which possibly, if you have decided plan A, you can quickly go to plan B. So at least in agriculture, we see that various front is started. For example, now you have remote sensing,
Right.
wherein you can identify from the satellite that which part of the area has less moisture or higher moisture, where you need to use your insecticide pesticides, which portion you can exclude, or that there is no infestation and you can exclude. So it has gone to those levels, but obviously it will take a time that we see that this will get commercialized fully in India,
Right.
because India, the farmers are still having small holdings and it becomes expensive. But obviously technology has taken a leapfrog, and you need to see what best you can take out of it.
Right. And then a lot of companies also out of Israel are innovating in this space, uh, both both in the agri-tech space and from a fintech perspective as well. Do you see a lot of potential collaboration and synergy with companies out of Israel?
Yeah, Israel is like a startup world.
Yeah.
They, even though they hardly have agriculture, they have so many agricultural products and agricultural fintechs. And also obviously, you'll be aware that almost 30% of all security and those kind of features are mostly
Yes.
developed by Israel.
Yes.
So obviously and luckily for us, we have a team there who helps us to identify newer things which comes from the Israel.
Okay.
And slowly we see that every second, third year, some or the other projects comes to us. Like drone, which was few years back was more of a distant vision, but now you see that drones are widely used in Israel. In India also, we see that there are various startups which have started,
Right.
who provides drone services for spraying. So I think it's amazing that we are linked to Israel, and the ideas keeps on coming. only thing is, being in India, we need to see which one fits our bill.
Sure.
So otherwise, the ideas keeps on coming.
No, and I think it's a great, especially for a company such as Adama, it's a great avenue, given that there is innovation happening both in India as well as in Israel, and you are sitting right at the cusp of it. So there is a humongous benefit, I would presume, in having both of the best worlds available to a company like Adama. Super. So, having spoken about digitization, having spoken about risk management and COVID times, you've been through quite a journey, Vikas, through your career, and I'd love to hear from you for aspiring CFOs and the younger ones who are on their journey to become CFOs. What would you advise them? How should they prepare? What should they be thinking about today?
Yeah, so I think one best suggestion would be to keep an open mind, because uh, there's a lot of learning which can happen when you start discussing with different teams and say fellow CFOs or your fellow professionals. If you keep your mind open and you are always think that okay, the uh, change is only static, in the sense change is only thing which you have to do. If you are not changing your behavior or your mindset, finally you'll get stuck to your routine mundane kind of thing. So change is only constant. So keep your mind open and ensure that you bring those changes.
Awesome. Vikas, so it's been an absolute privilege to have you on our first show. Thank you so much for all your insights and everything and your candor. You were extremely honest and straightforward in sharing your views about uh, the role, about the future, about digitization, and of course about the mindset of the CFO. So we really want to thank you for doing this and taking time out, especially on your birthday, um, and speaking to us. I'm sure it will benefit a lot of people as they hear you and your journey through your career. Thank you again, Vikas. We look forward to having you on future shows, and
Sure, sure.
thank you for everything you've done for CredAble and your support for CredAble. Really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you, Needham.